All right, Theodore, we'll have to leave it there. The House is about to come into session. Again, if you want to read this report from the Senate Intelligence Committee, go to cspan.org and the Washington Journal site. We have it linked there. That's it for today's Washington Journal. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, live coverage of the House.
House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., January 16, 2014. I hereby appoint the Honorable Kevin Yoder to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Dear God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We ask your special blessing upon the members of this people's house. They have faced difficult decisions in difficult times, but have labored hard to forge a significant compromise. As has been the testimony of history, difficult losses have been felt, while possibilities for a more positive future have been created. Bless our nation, O God, that this legislation, as difficult as it has been to work out, will prove to be beneficial for us, and that our fellow citizens might know that all of us are responsible for creating a stronger community as a nation. Bless all who have labored so hard in these past days and weeks, and be with them and with us all this day and every day to come. May all that is done be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
Amen. The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Kilmer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentlelady from West Virginia seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlelady from West Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, for a week now, residents across the Kanawha Valley have been told not to use their tap water for any purpose. Businesses and schools have been closed for over a week, and while things are returning to normal for some residents, tens of thousands of residents of West Virginians remain under a do-not-use water order due to a chemical leak from Freedom Industries into the Elk River, which is upstream from the public water system, our water system. For more than 2 decades, no government agency inspected this facility. Precious response time was lost because Freedom Industries did not immediately report the spill, and responders did not have sufficient information about the chemical. We must examine our existing laws at all levels of government, local, state, and federal, and find the gaps that allowed this spill to occur. At my request, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee will hold a hearing in Charleston to examine the causes of the spill, the response, and the actions that should be taken. I want to thank the West Virginia National Guard, the West Virginia Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, first responders, and many, many West Virginians and volunteers across the state, along with our neighbors in neighboring states. But West Virginians were just amazing. We joined together to meet this challenge and have exemplified once again that mountaineer spirit which we are very well known for. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the evidence for climate change is overwhelming, be it superstorms, mega droughts, migration of biological systems, the disappearance of historical glaciers, ocean acidification, or the melting of the polar ice cap. The potential for catastrophic change grows every year. Unfortunately, the House Republicans continue to push legislation that exacerbates climate change. Last year, the Republicans reduced funding for the clean energy technologies, interfered with R&D at the Department of Energy, and prevented the EPA from addressing carbon emissions. Our economy is expected to grow this year, and with that growth, carbon emissions will rise. The United States is a leader in technology and innovation. We should use this leadership as an opportunity to foster cooperation between public and private interests, to work together to provide low-cost, clean energy. Instead, it's been used by the House Republicans to bludgeon the EPA and to roll back the environmental gains of the past half-century. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, Hadi Partovi, co-founder of Code.org, testified in the Science Committee that by 2020, there will be 100,000 more computer science jobs in America than American students to fill them, and that women and minorities are underrepresented in these growing fields. I've got 24,002 reasons to care about this. There are 24,000 open computing jobs in my state right now, and I've got 2 little girls who will be entering into a workforce that will rely on skills in computing. Right now, only 17 states accept computer science as a core math or science credit. That's why I support the Computer Science Education Act, to fix this. According to an article in Education Week, in this last year, in 11 states, not a single African-American student took the AP Computer Science course. Not a single Latino student in 8 states. Not a single female student in 2 states. If we're going to compete and ensure all students can make it in America, we've got to close the participation gap and provide these opportunities in every state. We've got to step it up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to commemorate the 65th anniversary of Richmond Heights, a community that from its very beginning fostered inclusion and respect. I recently had the opportunity to read a recent book, Miami's Richmond Heights, which was published by written by Patricia Harper Garrett and her daughter Jessica Garrett Modkins, good friends. It chronicles the story of a community that was set up by Captain Frank Martin, a white Pan Am pilot who bought the land in 1949, knowing that a lot of World War II veterans, African-American World War II veterans, would be returning armed with the GI Bill but unable to purchase homes. He created this community based on racial equality and inclusion. It is one of the great communities of my district. The African-American leadership that it inspired, folks like Canon Theodore Gibson, the Reverend John Ferguson, who created the Second Baptist Church, and Senator Larcinia Bullard. And that leadership has passed on to others in Richmond Heights, where today we have Senator Dwight Bullard and Reverend Alfonso Jackson. So, Mr. Speaker, it is with great pride that I commemorate the 65th anniversary of Richmond Heights and Patricia Garrett's fantastic book. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, on December 28th, 1.3 million Americans lost their unemployment insurance because Congress failed to act. These families are struggling to put food on the table, to pay their bills, to heat their homes, and we have a responsibility to assist them in their time of need and as they continue to find work, look for work. But instead, Congress will go home today without taking action, and this is just outrageous. Every week that Congress ignores its responsibilities to our citizens, 72,000 more Americans lose their unemployment insurance, crucial assistance which not only supports them but also our economy. That is why I call on leadership to keep the House in session and to extend unemployment insurance now. We should stay here and do our job, for we are representing the people of America and those who we have a duty to serve. Let us stay here and make sure that Americans know that we have their back. that we're going to take care of them in their desperate time of need. I urge the House to stay in session and pass an extension to the unemployment insurance program. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've learned a lot in my first year in Congress, but I could serve here a lifetime and never understand how some members could be so callous and so short-sighted that they are ready to cut off a lifeline for millions of Americans, including 137,000 New Yorkers. These New Yorkers are hardworking people like Stephen from Sugarloaf, who wrote to me because he needs unemployment insurance to stay in his house, like Brenda in Fishkill, where she and her husband are both enrolled in retraining courses right now trying to get work and need this insurance just to make ends meet, like Janine in Warwick, who lost her job to outsourcing but still has to take care of her daughter, like Carol in Dutchess County, who may not be able to take care of her disabled husband without this assistance, like Ingrid from Highland Falls, who fought for her country in war and now has to worry about trying to put food on the table for her children. We must renew unemployment insurance for people like these now, because every week that goes by, there are 5,000 more people like Stephen and Brenda and Janine and Carol and Ingrid. These aren't statistics. They're hardworking Americans, and they need this Congress to act, and act now. And I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Washington seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to honor Captain Christopher Stover of Vancouver, who was tragically killed last week in a military training accident near Salthouse, England last week. A 4.0 student at Evergreen High School, Captain Stover chose to serve his country and attend the United States Air Force Academy. Captain Stover was a pilot of the HH-60G Pave Hawk helicopter and served tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan. According to his family and friends, Chris had a passion for flying and he loved his job. A high school teacher said he was caring and nurturing and was known for fostering a strong sense of community. Not long ago, he visited an elementary school in Vancouver to thank a group of children who had sent him cards while he was overseas and to tell them about his passion for flying. He is survived by his wife, Sarah, his parents, Maribel and Richard, and our thoughts and our prayers are with you. You know, we can never replace what you have lost, but on behalf of a grateful country and a grateful nation, we thank you, and we will always remember his service. There's an Air Force Academy tradition for those graduates who pass away. It comes from the third verse of the Air Force song. I'll carry on that tradition by saying, Captain Stover, here's a toast. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on H.R. 3362.
Objection.
Pursuant to House Resolution 455, I call up H.R. 3362 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3362, a bill to amend the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act to require transparency in the operation of American health benefit exchanges.
Pursuant to House Resolution 455, the amendment printed in Part B of House Report 113-322 is adopted. The bill as amended is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 60 minutes, with 40 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, and 20 minutes equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Ways and Means. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, each will control 20 minutes. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, each will control 10 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 3362, the Exchange Information Disclosure Act. This bill is fundamentally about transparency. Since healthcare.gov's disastrous launch, the public has received confusing and conflicting information about the site's functionality and the number of individuals actually able to purchase insurance through the website. States trying to enroll individuals in Medicaid and insurance companies trying to sign people up for private insurance have received incomplete and inaccurate applications from the website. H.R. 3362 would require the Secretary of HHS to provide a state-by-state breakdown of the number of unique website visits, the number of individuals who create an account, the number of individuals who select a qualified health plan, and the number of individuals who enrolled in a qualified health plan or Medicaid. The report must also describe the problems Americans are encountering with the website and how HHS is addressing them. The American people have a right to firm data and an accurate picture of the exchanges. I urge my colleagues to support this bill. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. Thank you. I'm afraid the bill before the House today, H.R. 3362, the Exchange Information Disclosure Act, is simply an effort by Republicans to continue to impede the efforts of the administration to implement the Affordable Care Act. Transparency in enrollment information is important for members of this body to receive, but this bill's requirements on the Secretary go way above and beyond what I think is necessary and valuable information. This is just an attempt to pile on so many requirements on the administration that they are taking away from the true job of enrolling people in the law. Look, enrollment numbers and visitors to the site are important pieces of information, and we certainly all know that. But this bill is simply unnecessary. There's already extensive disclosure of data on health insurance enrollments being provided. The administration releases enrollment data monthly, just like they do with Medicare and the Children's Health Insurance Program and other federal programs. The monthly HHS enrollment reports are excellent, detailed reports. In fact, the newest HHS monthly enrollment report, which was issued this Monday, which covers enrollment through December, has even more extensive data than the two earlier monthly reports. Mr. Speaker, in addition to providing data on total enrollments nationally and in the states, the latest report includes data both for the nation and the states on, first, greater breakdown of those who have selected marketplace plans, second, age breakdown, I stress age breakdown, of those who have selected marketplace plans, third, financial assistance status of those who have selected marketplace plans, and lastly, a breakdown of the coverage level or metal level of the plans people have selected. So these numbers show that there's a very strong demand for the quality, affordable coverage options now available to Americans because of the Affordable Care Act. More than 6 million Americans have now either signed up for a private health insurance plan or for Medicaid, including nearly the 2.2 million who signed up for private insurance through the marketplace. Nearly 1.8 million of these consumers signed up for private plans in December, and that's nearly 5 times as many people as signed up in October and November combined. Frankly, Mr. Speaker, I'm encouraged and excited by these numbers. Americans aren't going to the website because they're forced to, like the Republicans claim. They're going to the website because they want and need access to health insurance, and this should be no surprise. 30%, nearly 1 in 3 of people who have enrolled in a marketplace plan are younger than age 35. 24% are between 18 and 34 years old, and there was a more than 8-fold increase in December enrollments in the federal marketplace. In addition, more than 3 million young adults have gained coverage because the Affordable Care Act allows them to stay on their parents' plan until they turn 26. So we're getting more of the younger people as well. Meanwhile, healthcare.gov and state websites have received more than 53 million visits, and state and federal call centers have received more than 11 million calls. Now, the administration is committed to release this information monthly, the way they have done with every other federal program to date, so I'm sorry to say that I simply do not believe this is a serious effort in any sense of the way by Republicans. This bill is nothing but a weak effort to smear the law. And I urge members to oppose the bill. There are only so many resources out there. Why would we want HHS to have to, provide this excessive information? I'd rather they spent their time trying to enroll people, doing more outreach, encouraging people to sign up so that they actually have health insurance. So again, Mr. Speaker, I urge members to oppose this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in strong support of H.R. 3362, the Exchange Information Disclosure Act. This bill would require that HHS provide weekly progress reports regarding the President's health care law, an attempt to ensure greater transparency from an administration that has done everything that it can so far to bury the facts when it comes to its signature health care law. Remember, this is the administration that knew millions of Americans would receive cancellation notices, but they only acted to allow people to keep their health care plans that they had and liked after we forced their hand back a few months ago. And perhaps by acting today, we can again force them to do the right thing and share basic information with policymakers and the public about how the law is working or not. In building healthcare.gov for the October 1 start of open enrollment, the administration chose not to allow Americans to window shop and find accurate and reliable prices of health care plans in the exchange. Over the last 17 weeks since the law was launched, this administration has released enrollment figures on just a handful of occasions. And we're still left asking the most important question, who's paid? Instead, the administration has gone to great lengths to redefine enrollment as the number of folks who have selected a plan through the exchanges. These numbers simply don't tell us the true status of the law, however. More than 3 months after the start of open enrollment, we still don't know how many Americans have actually enrolled in health plans by paying their first month's premium. Just 1 day before the start of open enrollment, Secretary Sebelius defined success as enrolling 7 million Americans by the end of March of 2014. The administration has since distanced itself from enrollment being a measure of success at all. If enrolling individuals in health plans is not the goal, what is? Preventing access to reliable data about the exchanges is not exactly what you'd expect from the self-proclaimed most transparent administration in history. It should not take a vote in Congress to get basic information from the administration, but without voluntary transparency, we don't have any other choice. The bill before us would require HHS to provide accurate, useful figures about enrollment and the operation of the exchanges on a weekly basis. It also is going to require HHS to report to the American people other key metrics, including demographics of enrollees, Medicaid enrollment, regular reporting on ongoing problems with healthcare.gov, and HHS's efforts to address those issues. The President's health care law will cost the taxpayers an estimated $2 trillion over the next decade. At the very least, the administration should provide the American people regular and ongoing information about its implementation. There is no reason for the administration to keep the public and the Congress in the dark. Whether the news is good or bad, it's time for full disclosure. I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I applaud Mr. Terry for his leadership.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes now to a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, a gentleman from North Carolina, G.K. Butterfield.
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 3 minutes.
Let me thank you, Mr. Pallone, for yielding time, and especially thank you for your leadership on our committee. It has been nothing less than extraordinary. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the Exchange Information Disclosure Act. This bill would cost millions of dollars of limited federal resources, but doesn't include any mechanism for paying for it. It is an unnecessary piece of legislation that will have no impact or benefit to the American people. It is just the latest attempt by the Republican majority to incite fear and distrust of the federal health insurance marketplace and discredit President Obama and the Affordable Care Act. Washington Post columnist Greg Sargent wrote that the Exchange Information Disclosure Act is a political attack coming from a party that wants to see the law fail. The House has voted 47 times, Mr. Speaker, on bills that would repeal or undermine the Affordable Care Act, but not one of them has become law. My friend, Mr. Terry's bill that we are considering today marks the 48th attempt and is another nail in the coffin of haphazard Republican efforts to disenfranchise the American people by chipping away at the Affordable Care Act with the ultimate goal of taking away Americans' access to affordable health care. Make no mistake, this bill is not about transparency and open government. Its true purpose is to pile on more and more unnecessary, cumbersome, and unprecedented requirements so that HHS will be forced to focus time and attention away from managing the federal health insurance marketplace and redirect it to completing worthless weekly reports. I am particularly disappointed in the committee process, or more accurately, the lack of committee process with regard to this bill. The Energy and Commerce, the committee that I sit on, the Health Subcommittee. At no point did the chairman of the subcommittee nor the full committee hold a legislative hearing or markup on this bill. I don't recall one. Surely adding mountains of onerous reporting requirements that will cost the government millions in order to comply would have warranted an opportunity for members to weigh in before it was brought to the floor. Apparently, the chairman of the committee felt differently. This bill is now the 48th example of House Republicans pandering to their base by ramming through partisan policies that attack the president. The bill would require HHS to supply Congress weekly reports detailing the number of unique website visitors to healthcare.gov, the number of chat logins, and the number of enrollees by zip code and their level of coverage and other data sets. What exactly my friends hope to accomplish with this weekly data dump still escapes me. Perhaps House Republicans weren't aware of the extensive disclosure of data on health insurance enrollments that is already being provided on a monthly basis. The administration releases enrollment data monthly, Mr. Speaker, just like they do with Medicare and CHIP and other federal programs. May I have one additional minute?
Speaker yields the gentleman additional minute.
Gentleman's recognized for one additional minute.
Thank you. The monthly HHS enrollment reports are excellent, detailed reports. Weekly reports will shed no more light on enrollment in the health exchange than would weekly reports. The monthly reports. The bill also demands that HHS make publicly available a list of Navigator grantees. Were my colleagues unaware that the department released the entire list of Navigator grantees back in October? I have those here for your inspection. I will say it again, this bill is completely unnecessary. It is Republican fear-mongering. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, the Affordable Care Act is the law of the land. I ask my colleagues to embrace it. It's benefiting millions of Americans in my district and in your district as well. I thank you for the time, Mr. Pallone. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the prime sponsor of the legislation, gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry.
The gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Terry, is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to clarify one thing, we did have a legislative hearing on this bill with robust debate on it in that committee hearing. Evidently, you didn't get the notice of that hearing. No, I only have 3 minutes. If I have extra time, I will. Today we're asking what should be an easy vote and, frankly, a bipartisan vote. My legislation, the Exchange Information Disclosure Act, does nothing more than ask the administration to provide Congress, governors, and state insurance commissioners and the American people with information. And by the way, the information that is outlined in this bill to be provided or accessible on a weekly basis is simply what most states already require to be done by health insurance companies within their states. This is a request by state insurance commissioners, especially our one from Nebraska, that's very frustrated with the lack of information that they're receiving about who's signing up for what plans in the state of Nebraska. So this should be easy. But what we're talking about here today is basic transparency, so we all have the data to assess what's working and what's not. This bill is a mechanism for accountability so we can get the answers that both Democrats and Republicans and state insurance commissioners and governors need to know in order to understand what's working and what's not. We are asking for information that an entity overseeing a health insurance operation should have at the tip of their fingers at all times. Our metrics are not complex. We're simply asking for how many people have enrolled, how many of these people have paid their first month's premium, which means they are actually insured, that they've been effectuated. Which plan did they pick? What zip codes are they from, so we know what people in Nebraska or Iowa or Kansas have signed up? Were they already eligible for Medicare, or are these new enrollees from the expansion? These are critical issues in determining the safety and soundness of the policies of which being issued that, again, state insurance commissioners usually receive. This administration and some on the other side say that this information that we're requesting is extraneous and costly and burdensome, but yet this data is already being obtained. It's already on a real-time basis being calculated. It's just the issue of when and in what form this is released to the public. And cost, here's the the CBO score. Zero. Zero. Not millions that we're being told by our friends on the other side of the aisle in the White House. Now, one other thing. One more minute.
Yield the gentleman an additional minute.
So this necessary, usual course of business data, but we do add another part in here, and another frustration from our state insurance commissioners is they don't know who's selling the insurance. They would like to have the names of people that are the navigators out there. Grants go to organizations, but we don't know who's actually sitting down and selling policies or helping them through the exchange. That's, again, basic information that is normal course of business in the insurance world. And so we're just simply asking that they provide the same information that the state law would require of an insurance company who has a salesman that's out signing people up. And so that's the totality of this bill, and you have to ask the question, if they're fighting so hard, what are they trying to hide? I yield back.
The gentleman from Nebraska yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'd yield 4 minutes to the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Mr. Waxman.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, the supporters of this legislation claim that it's simply an effort to get more information about how the Affordable Care Act is being implemented. But it's not really that. It's an effort to slow down implementation of the new law by drowning the Department of Health and Human Services in red tape. They want enrollment information. But this week, they got enrollment information from the administration. That enrollment information showed that 2.2 million Americans have signed up for private coverage. They want demographic information. Well, HHS has given them demographic information. HHS is going to release all the information that they're asking for every month. But the Republicans are saying, oh, that's not good enough. We want it every week. But they wanted more than what otherwise might be available to them because they want to know some things that I can't understand why they'd want to know them. They want to know the zip codes of everybody who signed up. They want to know what the details of a chat between somebody who's asking a question on the website and what answers they got. I can't understand why that's important. They want to know what transpired in the call centers. In other words, they want to know what somebody said in a call center. And they, you know, is it their business to know what questions are asked in a call center? They want a list of the people who are the adjusters and the brokers. Well, there are thousands of them around the country. So there's no purpose to know that. They're not accredited by the government. If they are by the states, it's up to each state. They could ask each state that information. Let me put this in perspective. If anybody had a bill asking the private sector to come up with reports every single week on information that they could wait a couple more weeks to get, it would be looked at as just straight harassment. Government red tape, bureaucracy that's intruding into the business for no purpose. Well, that's what this bill is all about. They want to intrude in a government agency. I guess if they have a bureaucratic intrusion and harassment of a government agency, it's okay, but if it happened to a private sector in business, it would be inappropriate. If we ask polluters this information, you can get the information. If you ask them to give them the information every week, why do you need it every week? And I ask the Republicans, why do they need this every week if they're going to get it every month? Well, it's obvious. This law is working. And they don't want to come again to the floor and ask for its repeal because people have insurance. Millions of people now have insurance. If they want to repeal the law, they're going to take that insurance away from them. So they want to continue to say, what are they hiding? What are they hiding that they're not giving you on a weekly schedule, that they're giving you on a monthly schedule? Well, absolutely nothing that is significant. The enrollment reports we already have indicate that over 6 million people have signed up for coverage since October 1. The website can handle 80,000 simultaneous users and has been stable, even though there's a surge of enrollment in late December. The law is working. Well, Republicans don't want to hear these facts. They don't want to know about it, but they think they should get everybody at HHS, maybe even have them hire more people to report to them every week so they could still not recognize that there's good news in what is actually happening. This is a goofy bill. It's absolutely unnecessary, and I urge my colleagues to vote against it.
The gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, just to clarify, we hear the word sign up, signed up, equal to enrollment. We may know how many people have signed up. We do not know how many have actually enrolled and paid their first month premium. Secondly, we are stewards of the taxpayers. We're not shareholders. And the lack of data is precisely what led the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee to declare this law as a train wreck, that there are no metrics, no data to determine whether this law is working and on track. With that, I reserve.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Mr. Sarbanes.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank the Chairman of the Health Subcommittee. I rise to urge a no vote on H.R. 3362, which I think is really just designed to harass the Department of Health and Human Services as it's trying to do its job in bringing affordable health care to people all across this country. If you look at the metrics that are already being assembled by the agency on a monthly basis, they really present a very clear picture of whether there's progress being made or not being made with respect to the website and signing people up for affordable health care. And of course, we know that there is a lot of progress being made. That monthly report includes the total enrollments nationally and by state, so we can get a clear picture of what that trend is, and that's a positive trend. It includes gender breakdown of those who've signed up for the plans, age breakdown, the financial assistance, and what kinds of plans people are choosing. That's all good, useful information. And frankly, it's the kind of information that it makes sense to collect on a monthly basis, not on a weekly basis. I mean, these numbers sort of naturally evolve month to month. That's the picture, the photograph you want to take month to month. Week to week doesn't really get you any added insight into what's happening with the website or with the sign-ups. And then you look at some of the information that they would require on a weekly basis, and you got to ask yourself, what purpose would it serve? A state-by-state breakdown, I'm reading from the bill now, of the number of web chat logins. What are we going to do with that information? That is not useful. That does not add anything to the clear picture that can emerge on a monthly basis of how we're doing with the website. And finally, I have to observe, as Ranking Member Waxman just did a moment ago, that we hear all the time from our friends on the other side about the importance of government efficiency and working well and streamlining. And we hear them talk about that both with respect to government and obviously in terms of what they want to do for private sector businesses out there. These kinds of requirements don't help with that. They're not going to make the agency function more smoothly and more efficiently and get the information out in a sensible way to the American people. So this is really just designed to kind of harass the agency, make them run around in small circles, gathering information and providing stuff that doesn't give us any added perspective or insight into the progress that really is now being made. We can get that picture on a monthly basis. The information that HHS is providing to us and to the public, to the American people, I think is very valuable on that monthly basis, and that's the way we ought to continue to have it presented to us and presented to the American people. So I urge my colleagues to vote against H.R. 3362. Let's let the agency do its job and do it well. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, opponents of the Exchange Information Disclosure Act have argued that requiring weekly reports on the health care law to the American people is too burdensome, too costly for the Department of Health and Human Services. Yet somehow HHS managed to find money in its budget for taxpayer-funded grants spent on such things as bike lane signs, dog neutering campaigns, promoting a sport called pickleball, and lobbying campaigns for soda taxes. Clearly, HHS does not suffer from a lack of resources, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey recognized.
Mr. Speaker, could I just ask how much time remains?
The gentleman from Jersey has 5 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Pennsylvania has 10 minutes remaining.
I'd yield 3 minutes now to my colleague from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews, who spent so much effort in passing and drafting the Affordable Care Act.
The gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews, is recognized for 3 minutes. Without objection.
I thank my friend for New Jersey for his tireless leadership on this very important cause. It's inspirational. Since the Affordable Care Act became law, 9 million Americans have health insurance who did not have it before. 9 million people. Now, not surprisingly, there have been problems in the implementation of the law. Many customer service problems need to be addressed, and we should come together in good faith and make sure they get addressed. This bill takes us in the opposite direction. It says that people who could be working on solving the very real and important problems of customers trying to enroll in health insurance will have to write a report once a week instead of once a month. You go to get your car fixed, and there's a long line of people ahead of you, and you're going to be late to get back to work, and you find out the reason the line takes so long is that the person at the counter explains the history of the carburetor to every person who comes to pick up their car, instead of waiting on the people who are in line. Requiring a report a week instead of a report a month just doesn't make any sense. There's another reason to oppose this bill, though, that's even more important than that. Today, 10,000 Americans will go home and tell their children or their loved ones that they've run out of income because their unemployment benefits have expired. This week, 72,000 Americans will have that happen to them. There is a bill in this House, on this floor, that could be taken up this morning and voted on to provide relief to our neighbors and family members who are in that position. This majority leadership has ignored that legislation. This is a breathtaking misplacement of priorities. We can spend an hour of the House's time on harassing Health and Human Services into filing one report every week instead of one report every month. But we can't take 5 minutes and debate on a bill that will restore a measure of decency and income to 72,000 Americans a week. Many of these Americans are over 50 years old. For every one job that is advertised, there are 3 people looking for that job. The callous indifference of the House majority leadership to these people is just wrong. and so is this bill. We should reject this bill and instead proceed with a vote on aid to America's long-term unemployed. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from New Jersey yields back. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to the Vice Chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn.
The gentlelady from Tennessee is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania for the great work that he has done on this bill. Mr. Cherry has also done great work on this bill. You know what is so interesting, and one of the reasons we find it necessary to come and address these issues, Secretary Sebelius told us in December, 5,000 people a day were getting access to health care that they had not had before. The other side of that story, which was not told, 74,000 American families a day were getting cancellation notices. They were looking at one another across the dinner table and saying, guess what? Our insurance has been canceled. It has had a devastating effect. And as we try to do oversight and due diligence and continue to push for that oversight and due diligence and carry it out even this morning at Energy and Commerce Committee where we've had Mr. Cohen, what we have found is it's very difficult to get information. Even when we're sometimes hearing from employees, they're admitting what they told us was wrong, but then we do not get the straight story. So it is very appropriate that we require HHS to release weekly detailed reports about the exchanges, including their enrollment, their functionality, the efforts to address the technical issues at healthcare.gov. Absolutely. Absolutely, it is appropriate because this is all being done with the taxpayers' money. The American taxpayer has paid for every bit of this. It's not the federal government's money. It's not President Obama's money. It's not Congress's money. It is the taxpayers' money, and this is a failed rollout and a failed program. Now, this administration was supposed to be the most transparent administration in history. It has not been that. It's well documented that it hasn't been that, and indeed the rollout and the implementation of this law has been even less transparent. The reason, I think, is because there have been so many problems, such as thousands, millions of Americans losing access to their health insurance. None of the information being shared by the administration regarding enrollment means much of anything. We talk about people that enrolled, but we don't know how many people have paid and how many people have completed that process. What are the demographics of the individuals that are enrolling? All of this is information that the individual that is paying for this, the American taxpayer, deserves to know. Who has paid for this insurance? The White House has backed away from using any measure of success as a means to determine success. But as recently as September, Secretary Sebelius herself said that 7 million enrolled by the end of March would define success of the law. Well, is that 7 million that go to the website, put an insurance product in their cart, and then go think about it? You know, Mr. Speaker, when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time working in the retail industry, selling clothes in a little dress shop. Now, every once in a while, we would have somebody, they would come in, they would put something on hold, and they would say, I'm going to be back. Well, we called them the be-backs, because guess what? More often than not, they did not come back and complete that purchase. Yes, they put it on hold. Yes, they put it in an online shopping cart, but then they move away from it because this program is broken. It is too expensive to afford, and the American people do not want it. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would reserve. I only have myself and one more speaker. Okay. The gentleman.
The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes to a very active member of the Health Subcommittee, the gentleman from Louisiana, Dr. Cassidy.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I kind of keep asking myself, why would we not want to provide transparency? If the federal government is going to do a massive bureaucratic regime involving the American people, why should we not at least require them to be accountable for the success or failure of that regime? The Exchange Information Disclosure Act requires accountability and transparency, which has been, frankly, elusive from the administration on these issues. And indeed, before committee and before Americans, there has been a tendency to give information which is misleading. For example, enrollment numbers are calculated by the numbers who sign up for coverage, not those who actually pay for their first month's premium. In reality, unless you pay for that first month's premium, you're not enrolled. Coverage does not become effective until these are paid, and history shows many will sign up who will never actually enroll. Now, the American people are affected by this. They're paying for it. We are their employees, so to speak. They pay our salary. They have a right to know. And the only way to know is to see the results. I keep on smiling when we were in kind of a angry sort of a way, when I think about those folks who came to testify about the website. 2 weeks before it was to open, we were told it was ready and that there were no problems. I specifically asked if the Spanish language website was ready. Oh yes, there's no problem, we can just stand it up. In truth, none of that was true. Now, the only way we learned it was not true is that when the numbers came out, it was clear that folks were not enrolling. So everything we had been told was exposed as a lie, and yet we would not have known had we not seen those enrollment figures. Now, compliance with this should not be difficult. Insurance companies know on a daily basis how many people have clicked on, how many people have signed up, how many checks they've received. Insurance companies know this on a daily basis. Certainly, Mr. Speaker, the federal government can tell the American people these results on a weekly basis. Now, the Exchange Information Disclosure Act is a common-sense piece of legislation that all my colleagues who champion transparency and accountability should support. All it does is ensure full disclosure of the most important data points needed to determine what's really going on with the President's health care law's implementation. It's vitally important for the public. It's vitally important for us as we attempt to do the American people's will in our oversight of this program. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 1 minute.
You know, Mr. Speaker, we're told that the Exchange Information Disclosure Act is just a good faith effort to try to get some transparency. Oh, but wait, what? Isn't this bill coming from the same party that shut the government down to try to kill it? Didn't that just happen? You know, my memory is not faint about it. My memory is very clear that we stood here watching the Republican majority shut down all of government to prevent people from health care access. And now we're supposed to believe, oh, we just want to make the bill a little better with transparency. No, what has happened is that millions of people are signing up. People know that if you snatch a benefit from people that they have and expect to have, that that's going to cause issues. And so now the tactics have changed. Instead of an overt or a 50th repeal bill, now we'll just try to undermine it by making a bunch of paper requirements, more distraction, more paperwork, more division, more distraction, more obstruction. Now, I think I prefer the days when we just had repeal bills. Vote no.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
Okay. Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, this GOP bill is designed to harass the department, preventing it from doing its job. It's an unworkable, unnecessary bill that places onerous, unrealistic, and costly reporting requirements on HHS with no benefit to the general public. You know, I heard my colleagues say over and over again, oh, nobody's going to enroll. Now people are enrolling. They're saying, oh, well, we want to know whether they paid or not. I mean, where does it end? Why don't you spend your time trying to get people to enroll, trying to get give people information and do more outreach so people actually are able to get health insurance? That's what we're trying to do with the Affordable Care Act. Make people who don't have insurance get insurance, make people who do have it more affordable, have a better benefit package. All these things are wonderful. This is what people want. That's why so many people are, in fact, signing up. And I just cannot help but think that this is nothing but another effort to make it more burdensome, to scare people, to make it less likely that people actually enroll. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to mention that the administration opposes the bill. The administration said that they oppose the passage because it would require unfunded, unprecedented, and unnecessary reporting requirements that exceed those of other public and private programs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge a no vote.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 3 minutes to close.
Mr. Speaker, as Secretary Sebelius acknowledged at an Energy and Commerce hearing in December, enrollment in an exchange plan is not complete until the first month's premium has been paid. The administration so far has refused to tell the American people how many people are actually enrolled by paying their first month's premium in the health care law's exchanges. Asking the department to provide the American people regular updates is simply a matter of transparency. Given that HHS officials were so blatantly wrong about the readiness of the health care law's exchanges, they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. Regular disclosure is necessary to assess the status of the law, and that is all this bill requires. Let's make the administration, who has continually held back facts regarding implementation of the health care law, meet their pledge to be the most transparent in history. I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania yields back his remaining time. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 3362, the Exchange Information Disclosure Act. There's widespread agreement that the Obamacare rollout was a failure. Most of us believe the administration's lack of transparency and candor with Congress and the American people caused most of the problems. Since the beginning of the rollout, I've pressed the administration to release enrollment data to Congress. The data including who's actually enrolling and what mix of those who signed up looks like. Those are the kinds of facts we need before us to evaluate how this fundamental restructuring of our healthcare system is really operating. Yet the administration did not provide that long-promised transparency. Instead, I was forced to subpoena the administration to get any information. While I've received some of what I requested, it's not enough for Congress to understand the true impact of this law. It's clear that more than halfway through the enrollment, the administration is failing to meet its own goal of 7 million enrollees by March 31st. Last week, the administration released data that showed it has failed to meet even a more important goal, the right mix of young and healthy enrollees. The reality is that you need a good balance of young and healthy individuals in order to offset the more expensive costs of those who are older and less healthy. Without enough young and healthy enrollees, millions of Americans, including those who've had their plan canceled as a result of the President's broken promise, will see higher costs and fewer choices. With the little data we have, we can see this is actually what's happening. The American people deserve better than the administration's empty promises. They deserve to know what is really going on. Additionally, the administration has not provided any information on the number of people who have completed enrollment. We don't know how many people have paid their premium. And taxpayers don't know how many people are receiving tax credits.
There's no harm to national security if the administration provides this information to Congress, the media, and the American people, but there may be harm to an individual's health security if their interests aren't protected. Frankly, I believe this administration cares more about implementing this law than protecting the health care of American families. The American people have every right to know this information and the future of their health care. Having this data will not change the President's broken promises that if you like your plan, you can keep it, or his promise that families will see a $2,500 reduction in their premiums. However, it will undoubtedly affect Americans' health care future. This is not just arbitrary data. This information will determine how much premiums will increase next year, whether access to care will become more limited, and how many insurers may no longer offer coverage, and whether or not you can keep seeing your current doctor. This administration's failed rollout has given the American people little confidence that they can effectively oversee the overhaul of 1/6 of the economy. What possible reason, other than politics, could there be for the administration not releasing this information? This is data that Congress and the American people deserve to know, and that the administration should readily and willingly provide. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this bill today, and I call on the Senate to take quick action to move this common-sense legislation forward, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan is
I
recognized.
yield myself such time as I shall consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I think informed people are asking, why are we taking up this bill?